On numbers 32 and 33, we're using the four pictures labeled A through D to answer both questions. On number 32, it says which diagram represents the correct construction of equilateral triangle ABC if we're given the length of segment AB. So an equilateral triangle, remember, has all three sides are congruent to each other. And so if we're given the length of one side of the triangle, the other two would have to have that same length. So if we look at choice A, we have an arc that is drawn from A to B. And so that is a measurement of A to B to use to make that arc. That same measurement was drawn an arc from A to C. So we drew this arc from A, and we used the same setting from B to draw this arc. And so that concludes that this distance from A to B is the same as the distance from A to C, which is the same as the distance from B to C. So all three of those sides must be congruent, which means A is the correct construction. So if we wanted to, we could have done one single arc from here to here, because B and C are the same distance from A. And we could have done one solid arc from here to here, because A and C are the same distance from B. But that is the construction for an equilateral triangle. On part B, we have two sides of ours that are congruent to each other. These are the same distance from both B and A, but we didn't use the length of AB to create those distances. So it could possibly be an isosceles triangle where these two sides are congruent to each other, but we didn't use the length of AB to create them. On part C, even though we have arcs here, we've clearly used a different distance to go from A to C as we did from B to C. So those sides are not even congruent, and again, we did not use the length of AB to create them. On part C, it looks like we used a distance from B to A to draw an arc to create where C goes, but we didn't make sure that A and C were that same distance apart as well. So A to B would be congruent to B to C, and so again we would have an isosceles triangle, but not equilateral because that AC is not the same length. On number 33, it says which statement justifies the construction. All four of these statements are true, but we're looking for which one did we use to make the construction. So to make the construction, remember we were making three congruent sides using our arcs. So even though it is true that all three angles of the triangle would have to add up to 180, that is not what we used to make the construction. And even though, again, it is true that all three angles are equal in measure, they, remember, all have to add up to be 180, and they're all congruent, and so they would all be 60 degrees apiece. That, again, is not what we used to make the construction. Part C says that the length of AB, the distance between A and B, is equal to the distance between B and C, which is equal to the distance between A and C. That's what we used in the construction. We made sure that the sides were congruent to each other or were equal in measure. And D, again, is true. If we add up any two sides of the triangle, it's going to be greater than the third side. It's going to be twice as long. So again, that's a true statement, but we did not use that in making our construction.